All right. I'm going to just hang on in there because see if this comes up. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Okay, just to go, for some reason it didn't go through the first time. So let me just do it again and say hi to everybody. It's Joe Cioffi here as we take a look at what's going on. Good morning, Christopher. It's good evening. And Dio, hi there. Good to see everybody on. Anne-Marie Charlot, James NASCAR fan, Julianne Steele. Hi back to Belmore, Long Island. Geo Soul. Christopher, you can't get used tonight. Tiffany Campana. All good evening to you. Coops Kiss. Danielle Dean. Raymond is here. All right, very good. So we're going to get the ball rolling here. And you notice that the Brady Bunch screen is up. Andrea Johnson, good evening to you. Amber Napolitano, J-Boy, Zachary, Jerry Haber, William Perez from Puerto Rico. Okay, William, you're going to want to pay attention to this because of what's going to be going on in the tropics with Tropical Storm Maria. We're going to cover that, and we're going to talk first. We're going to talk about Hurricane Jose, and we'll grow Jose's picture here. And there we go. So you can see Jose on the screen with winds of 80 miles an hour. It's actually grown in size during the day today in terms of the geographic coverage. But if you look closely, the track has been already to the north. It actually has been nudging a little bit to the east. So, you know, we've been following the trends of the weather models for the last 24 hours, and they have all been very uniform in shifting away from coastal locations. This is why we do not have any kind of tropical storm watches up for the Outer Banks of North Carolina, nor do we have them up for New Jersey, for coastal New Jersey, for Long Island, or for southeastern Massachusetts. It looked like it yesterday and maybe even this morning that they were going to be needed, but models have decisively shifted out further to the east. So there's not going to be any issues. Marlon Reed, Scott Olson, John Sachs, Andrew Vogel, David Merritt, welcome. And you're in eastern North Carolina, David, but you've got nothing to worry about with Jose now that it has begun this eastward motion. It's pretty well defined. Nice core circulation there, presentation on the satellite view. Dottie's here, so a hi to Dottie. We had the Air Force reconnaissance aircraft fly into the plane, found the pressure drop down to 974 millibars. So at least from the standpoint of pressure, it has strengthened. It might strengthen a little bit more until it gets north of 35 degrees north and starts to hit that colder water. So we're going to take a look at the Hurricane Center's forecast track of this because they have shifted everything to the east with regards to that. And you can see it here. The cone of uncertainty, as it is known as, the area of uncertainty here in the white line has now shifted east off the coast, which makes complete sense since the track is going to go, you know, if this was going to be a problem for coastal areas, it would have to go left. Here's 40 degrees north, 70 degrees west, and it would have to go left of that. And it's not, it doesn't appear now that that's going to be the case. So we're going to just watch it moving out to sea. It is going to cause coastal flooding concerns and beach erosion concerns because Jose is going to be around for a while. And in fact, you know, I happened to take a look down near the South Shore today and noticed that there were a lot of waves breaking. The ocean was very, very turbulent. A lot of waves breaking onto the coast to the shore, and that's only going to get worse tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. And we are going toward the new moon on Wednesday. We are also going to the arrival of autumn on Thursday and all the autumnal equinox. So all of this is going to wreak some havoc with the tides. And Jose is going to be around for a while, possibly, if it does some sort of crazy loop, as some of the models suggest, once it's out over the coastal waters. And we're going to show that on the weather model in in a moment. The northeast satellite view, as we look at that, you can take the perspective of the East Coast with you in this, and let me just move that along. So you can see Jose here, well out over the open waters, about 450 miles southeast of coastal North Carolina, and also about the same distance from Bermuda. So it's going to pass between those two and then head out far enough. Maybe some fringe gales, gusts to gale force along the New Jersey coast and along the Long Island South Shore. Maybe a little bit more on the east end and a bit more than that for southeastern New England. But I don't think, unless there's a last-minute leftward shift, I really don't see this being a problem. We've got low pressure up in the northern plains, and you can see a lot of clouds running from there on up into Canada. This is the signature of the big ridge that's building in the eastern part of the United States, and you can see it here. There's very little weather going on east of the Mississippi, most of Texas, across the Gulf states. You've got a little bit of tropical moisture, but that's about it. But this is the signature of the big ridge that's building in the east. The problem is that you do have this trough that's moving across southeastern Canada, and it's enough to give Jose just a nudge to push it on out further to the east. So really not concerned with this. Model trends have been very clear. All of them are pretty much in the same place. Even the ones that are a little bit to the left pretty much make it an offshore pass. So let's move on to Tropical Storm Maria, which I think is going to become a hurricane very quickly, and it may become a major hurricane in a couple of days. Conditions here are very favorable for development. It is really organized so quickly from what it was yesterday when it was just a wave, and it just got better organized fast. You could watch it happening, and then overnight and during the day today, it really got juiced up. You can see the rotation. There's a core of thunderstorms that's beginning to develop. The top winds from the initial advisory this evening were 50 miles an hour for Maria, and they remain at 50 miles an hour for now. But looking at that satellite presentation, you got to wonder whether the winds are going to be higher on the next advisory. So the Hurricane Center is expecting this to become a hurricane rather quickly. By tomorrow afternoon, we may have this as a hurricane. Let me bring up the Hurricane Center's forecast, and there we go. And you can see it here. 2 p.m. Sunday, hurricane. 2 p.m. Monday, hurricane. We have watches and warnings, tropical storm watches for the northern windwards, southern Leeward Islands. We've got warnings up. We've got hurricane warnings up. For the wind extent of hurricanes. We do not have any hurricane warnings as of yet, but the expectation is that there will be a threat eventually to Puerto Rico and for the Dominican Republic. You can see the Hurricane Center has this as a major hurricane approaching Puerto Rico from the south, from the east-southeast, because it looks like, unlike Irma, which passed through the northern part of the islands, this one looks like it's going to go through the heart of the islands. I think it could be every bit of a Cat 2 when it goes through the leewards, and it might even be a bit stronger than that. Let's hope it isn't, because of what those poor people have been through already with Irma going by, with Jose and the glancing blow that Jose gave them. And we'll show you the hurricane track models with this. Everything in the tropics that we're seeing in terms of the upper air is really conducive for strengthening, and it's also favoring a west-northwest flow. You can see how tight those computer model, those hurricane track models are, taking them over the Leeward Islands, over Puerto Rico, and then over the northeast coast of the Dominican Republic. Some of them are a little bit further to the north. Let's hope that maybe they're right, that it would pass just north of Puerto Rico, but it's going to be awfully close with that. And then after that, late this week, they all seem to wind up into the southeastern Bahamas. So it looks like this is going to be another busy week ahead. I mean, it's just been so nonstop since Harvey. it just doesn't want to let go. I've been at it for so long now with this. I really could use a break, but it doesn't seem like I'm going to get one now. And we'll bring up the models for you. First, we'll start with Jose on the GFS, and let me get the board up so we can interact with this. Let me make sure that I got the correct model run, because it likes to give me the old one sometimes. So I'll just refresh. And this is for the first frame here is Monday morning. So you can see how far offshore it already is. I mean, it's almost to 70 west at this point. And moving it along, it does track north right along 70 or just west of 70. And then it suddenly just gets more northeast and northeast with its motion. So even the rain area, which yesterday was indicated to come into coastal New Jersey and Long Island and even into southern New England, is now way out. So I'm not really anticipating any problems from this. So why don't we take a look now at Tropical Storm Maria, and we will look at the wind field with this. And let me put that up for you. The 10-meter wind. And that's it. Okay, very good. You guys can see everything on the screen okay. Just let me know if there's a problem. So I'll just back it up. You can see Jose at the top as well. But here we are at the present time. Here's Maria passing north of Barbados, very close to, but north of Guadeloupe, and then right over the same islands and more that got hit by Irma. And at this point, by the way, at 9:56 millibars, I believe that is, or 55, that could be a Category 3. And we are at Tuesday now, and now we're going to go into Wednesday, and this is when we have the threat for the Virgin Islands, right over the Virgin Islands, right over Puerto Rico. As it's hard for me to read the pressure on this. Just having a little bit of a problem. The pressure's around 960, 950, so that would be, a strong Cat 2, Cat 3. I think it could wind up being stronger than that, depending on the exact track. Takes it right over the entire island of Puerto Rico, and then just along the north coast of the Dominican Republic, which will probably impact the circulation. Now, after we get through, we've got, my usual approach with these things is beyond the 5th day, you just start to get more and more squirrely with the tracks. And I want you to notice up in the northeast, in the upper right corner, that's Jose that's dropping southward. And at the point that we have here, which is next Sunday, you've got Maria just exiting the easternmost Bahamas, and you've got Bermuda sitting right in the middle in between Maria and Jose. And both the GFS and the European do this sort of weird looping motion with this. One of the things that's going to happen in the Atlantic is that steering currents are going to collapse. And I can show you that on the upper air. We'll take a look at that. Go to the 500 millibar. Where are you? There we go. And we'll change the region to the North Atlantic so you can see it better. And we can take a good look at what's happening here. And notice, I'll go back to the beginning, near the beginning, and then we'll just kind of roll it along. All right, so here's the point where Jose is punching a hole through the ridge. You've got this upper high out in the Atlantic over Bermuda. You've got another upper high in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. This was actually one upper high that was connected, but there was a weakness in there. Jose found it, moved through it, and as we move through time, you can see what happens. There's a little bit of troughing there in eastern Canada that picks this up and moves it to the northeast, just to the east of Cape Cod, just to the south of Nova Scotia. Now, because this is going to take a more of a winter cyclone look to it, there may be some weather with this for Nova Scotia. For those of you who are watching from there, just bear that in mind, that it might get close, at least from the standpoint of the GFS. But then you can see what happens. There's the main jet stream is running from Colorado on up through Minnesota, crosses up through Canada. There's a big upper high that's up in the northeastern part of the United States, unusually strong, and the jet is displaced well to the north. So the southern part of that jet stream is almost at Newfoundland, and the GFS and the European model show the same idea with this, in that Jose misses that trough and that jet stream and separates itself, and then underneath that upper high starts to drop south and southwestward, or at the very least becomes stationary. And you'll notice the odd track here with Maria being shown wrapped up in some kind of upper low underneath this big ridge. So, this is where it starts to get really squirrely and crazy. So I'm not really going to pay too much attention to this part of the equation until we get past the middle of this week and we see what happens. But overall, the overall pattern across North America has something that we hadn't really seen, except for brief moments, is that we have a deep trough out in the western part of the United States and a ridge here in the east. And this is, playing key roles in the steering mechanisms with regards to these tropical systems. And the ridge in the east stays pretty strong right through next weekend, and the trough still stays in the west. It starts to weaken in the west. It starts to come to the east as we get toward the latter part of the period, and finally the ridge crashes down, and you can see the westerlies drop all the way south into to the Carolinas. And there's more of a normalization of the atmosphere that goes on late in the period, and now we're into the month of October. I guess the model is suggesting that once we get through the next 10 days, there'll be another pattern change. We'll see if that's the case. It looks a little blocky up in northeastern Canada, but that could be just the one run that we are looking at this point. It's a very, very odd scenario that we have developing. It's going to be very tough to forecast all of this. By the way, it's not going to be easy at all. Usually when you have that ridge in the east, it is easier, but you have the complicating factor here with respect to the hurricanes running around, that it just makes it very, very difficult to figure all this out. So let me just, I'm going to, I didn't do this before, so I'll show you what the hurricane track models were with Jose. And we'll move that up to the top here. And you can see all of them take it out, even the westernmost. If the westernmost outliers wind up being correct, that would give us a bit more than just a glancing blow to Long Island and southeastern New England. That might put them into, gales and some rain. But I'm kind of thinking that since it's already sort of edged its way out further to the east, that we shouldn't see any problems from this. And you notice how in the longer term, some of these models get real squirrely. You got them going east, and then suddenly they go southwest. You've got 3 models that do that, and then you have this one that starts the looping action a little faster, takes it longer to move up the coast, and then starts the loop a little bit sooner. But again, I'm not really going to pay too much attention to that until we get to the middle part of this coming week. These model runs are going to be so volatile from run to run. And yes, how do I not lose my mind over this is a very good question. But I've been doing this for so long that you just, after a while, you just kind of get used to it. It's just the way it is. Weather, as I've said many times, and for those of you who are new here, weather should not be approached with any kind of certitude. It's extremely fluid. It's constantly changing. The change is constantly changing, and you're really spending a lot of your time just playing catch up on all of this. So if you kind of accept the fact that that's what weather is, you're gonna have a much more satisfying experience than trying to go from model run to model run to model run. Larry Jackson, the NCEP appears to prefer the 12Z Canadian. Okay, let's take a look and see what it did. And let me get rid of that. And let's interact. And let's put the eastern region, and let's get the precip up. And it's always best to start at the very beginning. So here we have Jose. You know, the Canadians got all this rain indicated, and I don't know if that's going to be the case. I mean, it would really have to become a truly extratropical system, I think, to have a rain shield like that. And then moving out to the northeast. I mean, the track on the Canadian is perhaps a little bit more to the north and west. It really brings the heart of some of that rain into southeastern New England. I don't know if I believe that, but I think we're going to just have to look at the character of this tropical system as it goes along. And it gives a pretty good shot of rain and wind to Nova Scotia, especially right near the coast. It'll be like a nor'easter for that area. And it looks like it will also go south of Newfoundland, so that it would not be a problem for them. I don't know if I really buy the idea of the Canadian with the track like that. It seems like it's one of the. It certainly is one of the ones that has decided to be as far to the left as it can be. Most of the, just about all the other model runs are, to the east of what the Canadian has shown us. But I'm thinking it's not. It's not going to be what it looks like. I'm going to bring up Maria again because I think this is really going to be front and center starting tomorrow. And let me just let's see if we can get it to refresh, or maybe we'll get a fresher view on the loop. Nope, still the same one. But either way, I mean, this is really, it's amazing again what it looked like yesterday and what it looks like today. It's just it's just very impressive. So I think we're going to get some. This one's going to be another one that's going to produce a lot of surprises. Can there be any shifts in the track for Jose? I don't think so. I really think Jose seems to have behaved fairly well with all of this. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. Okay, I just saw that somebody did ask about Tropical Storm Lee. Let's not forget Tropical Storm Lee, which is way, way out in the tropical Atlantic. And the conditions in the tropical Atlantic are very soon going to become rather hostile for not only just development, but even for the survival of this tropical storm, which is weak and minimal. Top winds are 40 miles an hour based on the satellite estimates. So you can see there's a ball of convection and thunderstorms, but it really isn't well defined. We don't see a well-defined circulation with this, but I suspect that we may see Lee disappear over the next 4 or 5 days. Most of the models, the intensity guidance, and with this big upper low that's going to be out in the central Atlantic dropping southward, there's probably going to be a strong wind shear environment that'll set up, and that may take care of Lee. Do I think Maria might head to the Gulf? Pugmaster. Well, look, in the long range, I think we could speculate in all different sorts of directions. You've got that big ridge in the east. Is Jose going to be an issue? If Jose loops, you are going to see a trough, some troughing and some weakness in the ridge along the east coast that will make Maria turn more northward over time. Maybe that's what the models are picking up on. But if that loop doesn't happen, if Jose winds up going out straight to the east and goodbye, then you might have a totally different scenario setting up along the southeast coast of the United States, where you have much more of a ridge, and maybe that'll push things further along to the west. This is long-term speculation about that with regards to that, so we're going to just have to wait and see. Andrew Vogel, being that Cat 5 hurricanes have been tropical in theory, if there were a perfect environment, how strong could a hurricane possibly get? What are the theories on this? The sky's the limit. I don't think the sky's the limit. You know, when you look at the whole, you know, the world and the hurricane activity that occurs out in the Pacific, you know, Patricia a couple of years ago, I think pushed just about to the upper limit when they had a top wind of 205. I think there were some typhoons in the Pacific that pushed up over the 200 mark. That's kind of the top, you know, that is kind of the top limit with regards to the thermodynamics in the atmosphere. Cyan asks, what do I think of Maria on the CMC run? Okay, I'm just going to pull it up off screen here because it'll just save me a little bit of time. Hang on, and let me take a look because I really didn't look at the Canadian too closely, but you've just given me the opportunity to. So let's see. Looks like the Canadian's track is a little bit, it's south, and it takes it actually across all of the islands, including Cuba, before it brings it into South Florida and into the Gulf of Mexico. But the primary difference with that, the reason why it does that is because it takes Jose straight out to the east. It never drops it southward. It also holds on to Lee as a tropical system and moves it up toward Bermuda. I think that's Lee. Or it might be actually, no, that is Lee. And it brings it up towards Bermuda as a weak tropical storm. So in order for the Canadians' idea to be correct, Cyan, you're going to have Jose move out to sea and go and keep going across the Atlantic. Because in that case, there won't be any weakening of the ridge along the East Coast. Ryan Hidalgo, leaving for Florida on the 28th from New York City. Why do I think Maria is going to screw up my travel on the one end of the or the other end of the trip? Well, the 28th, next Friday's the 22nd. I mean, if it's going to approach that Florida, it might be late next weekend. So it may have already passed it at that point, if that's where it goes. And we don't know that that's the case. So again, that's all in the land of speculation. So Raymond, I just told you what the CMC did. Is it possible for the hurricane, Joyce Mack wants to know, brought a bunch of tropical killer mosquitoes to her on the Northeast? These things are killers in the past few days. I have to tell you, it's very warm and very humid out here. So they're thriving. We need a good cold night to wipe them out. And we haven't quite had that yet. So as long as we have this big ridge in the east, you can probably expect these mosquitoes to last a little bit longer than they normally would. Let's see. Oh, no problem, Andrew. Sometimes I apologize if I miss your questions. The board scrolls out really fast. Anthony Orr, our resident historian, points out that Hurricane Patricia reached 215 miles an hour on the peak wind. I'm just going to scroll back. Flooding in Cambodia. Weather is crazy all over the world. Well, it seems to be. Certainly at this point, too many strange things have been going on. And please don't start the conspiracy theories, okay? But too many large-scale weather events have been going on. Dominican Republic mountains will dramatically weaken any storm. Iron Mine 10, that is correct, because the mountains are quite high in the Dominican Republic, and that disrupts the circulation. Esme, if the warm water was churned up by Irma and Jose, I would think that would not be favorable for Maria. One of the things I didn't realize, Esme, is that upwelling in that part of the world this time of the year doesn't have a lot of impact because the warm water in the oceans goes down to a fairly deep level. So even the upwelling only cools it by a degree or two, and then within a couple of days, it just gets normalized. And in fact, the water temperatures east of the islands are actually higher now than they were when Irma approached. They are running between 29 and 30 degrees Celsius, or up to 86 Fahrenheit. James CIP, what's up with you? Thanks for glad you're here tonight. Why satellite color images are not showing? Oh, I didn't put up the enhanced image. I didn't do that on the screen, but I can do that for you right now. Let's do that. Move this to the top. So Ravindran Narayan. I hope, God, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't butcher your name there. But you can see on the color enhancement of Jose, there's a fairly well-defined center right there in that blue spot. Looks like that's where the center of circulation might be at this point. And it looks like it's still trying to organize. So it might actually get a little bit stronger before the strengthening peaks. And yes, Isaiah, correct. Maria's track is going to ultimately depend on how, if Jose exits, because if it doesn't exit and it orchestrates that loop, it's going to weaken the ridge in the eastern part of the United States, and that's going to create a whole bunch of different scenarios with regards to Maria. So, we've got certainly a lot to think about when it comes to that particular tropical storm. Let me scroll down on the messages here so we can go through some more. If I had to guess where Maria would go, well, I think it's got a fair chance to follow the Hurricane Center's track. I don't want to just automatically jump to their forecast, but I think it seems pretty reasonable. And I think it probably stands a fair chance of going to the Bahamas. After that, you know what the questions are. Jose and the ridge. And Raymond and Lee going to Albany because the same name hit 2 weeks after Hurricane Irene in 2011. Well, that's just one of those perfect coincidences if that was going to happen again. So I wouldn't worry about it from that angle. And I really honestly think that Lee is going to disappear. The Maestro way, and I will get with you shortly, by the way. Do I like Ventusky.com? You know what? I think I've looked at it a few times. It's interesting. I think we certainly could use it, and maybe I'll add it to my screen for the next one. Glad you put that up because I wasn't 100% sure how to spell it. So it's Ventusky or Ventusky, Ventusky.com. Okay, I will take a look at it and see if I can get it up on the screen. Thank you, Jerry Haber. Appreciate it that you're here. Randy Bruder, thank you for hitting the super chat. Really appreciate it, and welcome. If I think you're the first time here, thank you so much. Hope you're enjoying all this. So we approach weather here for those of you who are new in a bit of a different way, in a very calm, methodical, non-hype, logical way. We look at what's going on. We try to evaluate things, and we go from there. And thank you very much again. $2. Get myself a cup of coffee with that, and put it towards, or either that or put it towards a cigar, so I can when I go fishing tomorrow. Why do I have so many maps on the screen? Well, I'm trying something different by putting myself in the upper corner and doing this sort of Brady Bunch setup so that you can see some of the satellite loops going on while maybe I'm just talking. I don't know that you guys want to see me on a big screen for 10, 15 minutes at a time. So at least this way you've got a few other things that you can look at. Yes, Typhoon Tip, 872 millibars in 1979 holds the record for the strongest hurricane in the Pacific, West Pacific. It's a typhoon. And in terms of pressure, 872 millibars. Yes, with all this weather drama, someone should write a musical and then put it on Broadway. If Jose exits, Maria, Zachary Gribbins, I would postulate that if Jose exits and there's nothing else of consequence going on, the ridge will be stronger, and that would probably favor a more westerly track. So from that argument, I would say that the odds of something getting to Florida and into the Gulf of Mexico would increase. But the big question is, what is Jose going to do after it makes its turn? The logical thing for it to do, and the most common thing for it to do, is to move out to sea to the northeast. But again, we have those steering currents in the Atlantic that are going to be on the verge of collapse, and that is going to make for a possibly different scenario going forward. So all we can do at this point is watch to see what happens. We see what the models are showing us now. Now let's see what the trends are over the next several days with regards to Jose. And I'm hoping, I don't think it'll happen, but even if there is a bit of a leftward shift in the models tonight, it would probably be just very slight. I don't expect any major changes in the model runs as they begin. Cynthia Gwynn Yadis, how are you tonight? What do you think about the way the GFS is still handling pressures? Does it match with the NHC intents? Is something going on with the GFS? Ever since they did that upgrade, I think we have to use them carefully. But what it is showing with respect to Maria may make sense because when you look at the other intensity models, you have a lot of the intensity models bringing this to either a Category 3 or a Category 4 in the next 4 days. So the GFS pressures may not be totally wrong, and that would assume, by the way, that it would take a track that keeps it north of the Dominican Republic and maybe right along the north coast of Puerto Rico, where it spends a minimal amount of time interacting with the land. So it's not unreasonable with respect to Maria. It's probably a little bit unreasonable with respect to Jose, unless there's something baroclinic in the atmosphere going on. In other words, a non-tropical influence onto Jose once it gets a little further north to justify pressures down lower than 960. But I don't think from what I see from the strength of the trough, it doesn't impress me enough to do that. Why does the European Ethan Kerr keep Jose closer to the coast? The European seems to want to be on the left side of the envelope here, but it's not to the left by that much. It's maybe 1 degree further to the left. It isn't, a big difference. At least I don't think it's a big enough difference to make any real change in terms of the actual forecast that you would make for some of those coastal areas, at least not from what I saw today. The night runs might say different, but seeing Jose already kind of nudging out to the east kind of tells me that there's not going to be any serious issues with tonight's run. Joyce Mack, you feel so sorry for those islands. I got to tell you, I really hope, with Maria, it really, to me, looks kind of ominous for them because of the fact that it's developing so quickly and conditions are favorable for gradual to rapid strengthening. So this may wind up developing faster than even some of the models are indicating. So we have to, they're going to have to we'll watch this ever so carefully. And, to have this, a storm that's, even if it's just a Cat 2 or even a Cat 1, with the devastation that they suffer from Hurricane Irma, my God, where are these people going to go? They haven't even gotten to pay, step 1 of the recovery phase. It's going to take them years to perhaps get themselves back together. And I wonder, I haven't heard too much, I wonder if communications has been restored to all of those islands, especially some of the smaller islands. Do they even know that it's coming? Do I think the 0Z and GFS will shift it toward the southeast? I'm sorry, but which storm, Isaiah, Jacob, are we referring to? Let me know if you're talking about Maria or if you're talking about Jose, or I don't think you're talking about Lee, so it's either one or the other. I'm guessing, with respect to Maria, maybe it's possible it could be a little bit further south than what's being modeled at the moment, but we'll see. The Canadian is the furthest south, but the Canadian's not that far south. It's still going to take it right over a good chunk of those islands. It just takes it along the south coast of Puerto Rico and then over the Dominican. Well, I think it even took it over the Puerto Rico and all of the Dominican Republic and over Cuba. That would disrupt the circulation all the way through, by the way. Machete, you're going to have to ask your question about power lines at FPL, because I guess you guys are still having trouble getting your power back down in Florida. First time in 300 years in the Caribbean, no living person is living on the island of Barbuda. and is not able. Barbuda is not able to be lived on. That's I didn't even know that. That's astounding. They had to take every person off that island. Oh my God. Minimal communications. Okay. Well, at least they know there's something out there. But to have a third major, possibly a third major approach in less than 2 weeks. I mean, that's got to be. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. Because after going through Sandy, you feel very vulnerable after you have something like that. You think you're going to get another one right away. It's like if you've had, God forbid, you have a car accident and you haven't had one for many, many years, or if you've never had one at all, you suddenly think that you're going to have one every day. So to have to face a second one is bad enough. To face a third one, oh my, no. I couldn't even begin to fathom that. All right, so look, let's call it a night, folks. We will not have a midnight live stream. We will have a live stream tomorrow. I'll do one in the morning, maybe around 9 or 10 a.m. Eastern time. Let's see how I feel when I get up in the morning, and I'll put one together. And we will probably do another one tomorrow evening because the weekend schedule is a little easier for me. And now that I have this, by the way, I have this set up, where I work, so I can be able to do I'll be doing some live streams in the evening hours rather than when I have the time, rather than do it at midnight. But I'm going to keep my options open next week to see what happens. Well, in the meantime, we'll just kind of stick with the way things are. So we'll see you tomorrow in the mornings, figure around 9 or 10 o'clock Eastern time. And thank you again, Randy Broder, for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it very much. And for those of you all along that have hit the Super Chat, I do appreciate it greatly. Like I said, it gets me either a nice coffee from Starbucks or I get myself a cigar and relax. And with all these hurricanes running around, I need to relax. Okay, I have to tell you though, quite honestly, this is mainly because of the fact that I'm able to. These hurricanes have been happening in places other than my own backyard, so I don't have the added pressure of my own forecast. Jose was to a small degree, but it wasn't. Overly, it wasn't as if I was staring a hurricane coming, screaming up the coast with hurricane warnings imminent. The uncertainty was easy enough to deal with. But when you have when I'm forecasting in the wintertime, when we're forecasting for snow, that's a lot more stressful for me. So it'll be interesting when we get to that point and we start to talk about wintertime weather. And by the way, I know that there are a lot of you from around the country, and up until hurricane season, really, we got into this very active period with these tropical systems. I was spending a lot of, most of my time focusing on weather around the country. I haven't really been able to do that, and I will, once the things calm down, if there's a big storm that goes on in the west, I know you guys had some snow up in the northern Rockies. Some very chilly weather has come down into the western part of the United States with a deep trough. Once we get some semblance of normalcy in the overall weather pattern, I will go back to talking about weather from coast to coast. So, so just bear with me and bear with us with all these tropical systems running around. Okay, have a great night, everybody. Thank you for being here on my YouTube channel, and we will see you in the morning.